Hello, math class. We're going to do a continuation of yesterday's lesson on common factoring and learn a couple new things. If you haven't yet done the quiz that's on the screen right now, it and its answer key are attached to today's lesson post on Edmodo. So go ahead and do that if you haven't yet done it. Once you've done that quiz and you've checked your answers, we'll go back to yesterday's note and continue. Now, yesterday, what we were factoring out of expressions were monomials. Okay, so terms like 4 or x or 17x squared, things that we could divide out of every term, greatest common factors. Today will be very much the same, but instead of factoring out monomials, we'll be factoring out binomials. Now, at first, this is going to look a little bit weird, but you'll see it actually gets pretty easy. So if you think of these two things, oh, I guess I need a pen. Let's get a pen. If you think of these two things as two big terms, you can see that what they have in common is not some monomial, but actually the greatest common factor is that thing in brackets, x plus 5, a binomial. So we're going to factor that right out. So just like yesterday, we're going to write down our greatest common factor first, and then we're going to write down what's left after we've divided it out. I'm going to write this down in a completion this time just so you can see what's happening. So if I divide this by that, it's going to cancel out. I'm going to be left with 4x. And here it's going to cancel again. I'll be left with a negative 7. It's as simple as that. Let's do the second one. Again, our greatest common factor is going to be this binomial, 2y minus 7. So let me write that down first. This is what I'm dividing out of everything. And I'll be left with 5x and 3z. Now, if you don't believe that this works, if this just looks like some kind of crazy algebra magic, I challenge you to expand this initial expression, expand and simplify it, and then expand and simplify the second one here using FOIL, and you'll find that you get the same thing. Why don't you pause the video right now and try this third one on your own? Okay, hopefully you were able to find the greatest common factor, which is this binomial right here. So we're going to factor out x minus 78. Oh, by the way, when I say factor out, what I'm really just saying is divide out, right? We're dividing something out. So we're going to factor out that, and what I'm left with is 3xyz and a negative 5. That's it. Okay, now this is going to become handy even more so in the next thing that we're going to do. Just be careful when you're trying to do this method. You can only do it if the two binomials are identical. This would have to be an x minus 78 and another x minus 78. If it was a positive or there was a negative somewhere else, it just wouldn't work. Okay, and we're going to see why in this next section. So homework questions like that are number 5 and 11. Let's move on. This is another special kind of factoring if you see four terms. Now, using what you learned yesterday, if you saw four terms, you probably would go, okay, well, the greatest common factor here is, let's see, 2, and there's only an x in these terms, so probably just 2. Okay, and if I factor 2 out, then I'm left with all these other things. Now, you could do that, but it actually gets even simpler than that. We can factor this down even simpler. So what we're going to do is follow these set of steps. First thing is we're looking for four terms, which we have. And then we're gonna draw a dotted line after the second term. You know what? I'm actually going to get us to do the second question first. Okay, so let's follow the directions. We have four terms, perfect. And we're going to draw a dotted line after the second term. And what we're going to do is factor each half of the expression on its own. So I'm going to factor these two, and then I'm going to factor these two separately. And that's going to actually help us out. So if I look at these two terms right here, what is the greatest common factor of the two of them? Well, it's going to be a. I can divide both of them by a, right? So I write down my factor, and I'm left with x plus y. I can do the same thing over here. What can I factor out of these two terms? A positive 2. I'm going to write down plus 2. And then once I divide them both by 2, I'll be left with an x plus y. Hopefully, right away you see you're left with something that looks just like what we were working on above. We have two binomials that are identical. So what we can do is we can actually factor again, factor that x plus y out of both of those terms, and we'll be left with a plus 2. Again, if this looks like some sort of magical math that doesn't make any sense, if you use FOIL on this factored expression here, if you use FOIL to expand it and simplify it, you'll end up with exactly that. It totally works. It's weird, but it totally works. Let's do the second one. Sometimes things aren't going to work out so nice and neatly as they did in our first example here. I'm going to show you how to problem solve when that happens. Okay, so I'm going to draw my dotted line after the second term, and you don't have to do that forever. We're just going to do it for now to help us sort out what we're doing. So in these first two terms, I can factor out a 2 and an x. So let's see here. 2x leaves me with x minus 3. And with these second terms, I've changed this to a plus because that'll work better for the question we're doing. I can factor out a 2, and that's it. There's not an x there, so I can factor out a 2. So I'm going to go plus 2, and I'm going to divide by 2. That's going to give me 3 minus x. Now, unfortunately, what I'm left with is something that's similar to, but not identical to the other binomial. Here I have an x minus 3, and here I have a 3 minus x. They're not the same thing. So the signs have been switched. The 3 was gone from negative to positive, and the opposite for the x. But we can actually fix that. So what I'm going to do to fix that is, instead of factoring out 2, I'm actually going to factor out negative 2. So I can actually divide both of these terms by a negative 2, and that should solve my problem. So we're going to make this a, can I erase this? I don't know how to do that. Let's see here. Eraser. Ooh, yes. Okay, so I'm going to factor out a negative 2, and I'll be left with a negative 3 and a positive x, which looks different, but if you think about it, you reorder those, they're actually the same thing. Negative 3 plus x is the same as x minus 3. So just for this time, I'm actually going to rewrite it just so we can see that what we're left with here is two identical binomials. We're going to factor that out just like we did before. We're going to divide both terms by x minus 3, and that will leave us with a 2x minus 2. Again, if you don't think that works, expand it out and simplify it, and you'll see it's exactly the same as our original expression. That's it for today. Go ahead and practice those questions. The homework is on the unit outline, which if you don't have it printed out, it is on the Redeemer website. Here's your questions, number 5, 6, 11, and 13. A couple of challenges there that you can try. Hey, and by the way, guys, if this online education thing is really stressing you out, you've got a lot of difficulties, you're having trouble learning, you're having trouble keeping up with the different apps and things we're using, you're not alone in that. We have lots of time to figure this out, and I don't hesitate, please, to contact me with any questions you have. I'm happy to help you out with any technical issues you have. But for math in particular, we've got math help with Mr. Inrig available anytime over Skype or Zoom. And as well, you can set up a Zoom meeting with me anytime if you want me to walk you through some math problems. We can do it just like this video lesson where I share my screen with you, and you just get to sit there and watch me solve in front of you, and you can ask me questions. Or if you prefer, you can turn your own webcam on and point it at your homework, and I can see what you're doing and maybe help you out with whatever problems you're having. Of course, it's also sometimes you might just have a small problem that can be answered by sending me a quick message on Edmodo. That would be fine too. Well, I hope this all works out for you guys today, and that if you have any questions that you're going to ask for help. That's super important that you ask for help. That's all.